Rowing the Atlantic came out in October this year, and I think that it's just an amazing journey that I think Roz is going to fill you all in on. So without further ado, please help me welcome Ms. Roz Savage.
What a lovely introduction. Wow, that's a tough act to follow. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that I would be standing here holding in my hand a copy of a book with my name on the cover, I'd have told you you were probably crazy. And if you'd have told me that the book would be called Rowing the Atlantic, I would have said you were definitely crazy. Because 10 years ago I was working in a cubicle in a London office, staring out of the window and daydreaming of how life might be, but never really believing that I could have an adventure like this. And I suppose I had this feeling that I was here for a purpose, and I had no idea what it was, but I was pretty sure that working in a cubicle was not it. And that feeling just kept growing, and until I had to do something about it. I didn't really know what to do, because I didn't have a specific dream. Some people as children dream about climbing a particular mountain, or maybe even rowing across oceans, but that was not me. I was not an adventurous type of person at all. I was very much the bookworm. But I had this idea of the kind of person that I wanted to be, and it was an adventurous type of person, as in adventurous in life, not necessarily physically adventurous, but someone who would just get out there and give things a try, and maybe not always succeed, but when something didn't go according to plan, they just dust themselves off and try again. They would just be greedy for all of life's experiences. Unfortunately, the kind of person I actually was at that time was a very sort of timid person, very hemmed in by my own perception of what other people expected of me. So how did I go from being the timid office worker to being Roz the rower? Well, it was a very gradual process, but with a few pivotal moments. And the first of those pivotal moments was when I sat down and wrote two versions of my own obituary. The one that I wanted, which was this colourful, adventuresome type of person, and the one that I was then heading for, which, you know, is a nice enough kind of obituary. A pleasant life, comfortable, secure, very nice. And I just decided that maybe nice was not what I wanted out of life. But I didn't really want to recognise the implications of this. I think I already knew at that point it was going to mean letting go of a lot of the things that to me represented my security, my comfort. So when I wrote those two versions of my own obituary and compared them and realised that some really dramatic changes were needed, I went, I don't really want to know that, and just put them away in a drawer and tried to forget about them. But it's really difficult to pretend not to know something once you know it. So then comes the next pivotal moment, which was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done, harder even than rowing across the Atlantic, although that was very hard too. I realised that in order to really be free to be me, I needed to be on my own. So unfortunately at the time that involved leaving my husband, which for me was like stepping off the edge of the known world. But you know what, when I actually did it, I looked back at that decision from the other side. I went, wow, I just did something that scared me half to death, but it went okay. The sun still rises in the morning, the world is still turning. If I could do that thing that really scared me, then what else can I do? And it just opened up a world of potential to me. So I was starting to get the hang of this life thing. I was starting to figure out how to be happy. I was developing a new value system that really was based more on prioritising who I was rather than what I owned. And I felt a bit like maybe a carpenter who's got a lovely shiny new set of tools, the tools being my new life skills. But I didn't have any wood to use those tools on. I needed a project, something that I could apply those new life skills to. So I was asking this question of the universe, what shall I do next? And I tried a few things, and maybe like the people in my obituary, I had a few like little failures, or let's call them learning experiences along the way, until one day I was still debating with myself, what am I going to do next? And I was driving along in my VW camper van. I think I was on my way up to Leeds to see my mother. And this crazy idea popped into my head. Why don't you row across oceans? I had in the past rowed across oceans. I'd actually met somebody through the Royal Geographical Society who had told me over dinner one night that he and his mother had rowed across the Atlantic. So I suppose in my mind it was a kind of challenging but doable thing. I mean, if someone's mother could do it, just how difficult could it be? At that point I hadn't actually met her, and she is quite a force of nature, but by the time I did meet her and realised she was not your typical mum, I'd already declared that I was going to do this thing, and it was too late to back out. So I think I knew in that first moment that the idea came to me that it just met all my criteria. It was just perfect. It was going to challenge me as a person. It was going to force me. I don't know. Don't they know who the star attraction is this afternoon?
better rowing than flying.
Yeah, they're going a little bit faster than I do. Yes, it was going to teach me self-sufficiency. It was going to be adventurous. It was something that I could write a book about or give talks about. It just seemed to tick all the boxes. So my first reaction was, that is perfect. My second reaction was, that's ridiculous. That is without a doubt the worst idea I've ever had in my whole life. So for the following week I didn't tell anybody about it, and I really tried to talk myself out of it. But every morning I would just wake up and think of more and more reasons why it was just perfect in every regard. Until by the end of the week I realised I was just going to have to do it, or else spend the rest of my life thinking, if only. So then I wrote the to-do list. And I broke it down into just tiny little tasks, like if I was going to do this massively challenging thing, what would I need to learn, what books would I read, who would I talk to, what money would I need to raise, what would I need to buy. And by the time I'd written that list, it all started to look really frighteningly doable. And in fact I still do that whenever I'm facing a big challenge. I just come up with my to-do list, and if there's anything on that list that still looks daunting, then then the list isn't detailed enough, and I take it down to the next level. And almost anything, whether it's rowing across the ocean or starting your own business, that list approach just really helps me out. So it came to pass that I rowed across the Atlantic 14 months after that moment the light bulb went on over my head. I set out as the only solo female competitor in the Atlantic rowing race. And I thought I was really well prepared. I actually do believe I was as well prepared as I possibly could be, but there was nothing that could fully prepare me for the reality of being out there on my own in a little 23-foot rowboat in the middle of the ocean. I won't say anything more about that now because it's all in the book, which I hope you will enjoy. It's called Rowing the Atlantic, but it's not really about rowing the Atlantic, because let's face it, that probably wouldn't be that interesting, and not that many of you want to know how to row across an ocean. So it is about my experiences out there. It was a very, very intense experience. Physically it was tough. Everything on the boat broke. I was physically suffering from tendinitis in my shoulders and saltwater sores on my backside, but actually for me the most challenging aspect was the psychological side of it. I think especially on the ocean, where you've got very little sensory input, you've really just got the ocean, the sky and a little silver rowboat. The mind is really free to make it heaven or make it hell. And I managed to do a really good job on creating my own personal hell out there by just being so tough on myself initially. On about day 3 it really started to dawn on me just what I had let myself in for, and I just thought, oh my god, what have I done? And I just had to hang on in there. I'd already passed the point of no return. The trade winds were already blowing me towards Antigua. I couldn't turn around and row back into the wind. So I just had to figure out how the hell I was going to get to the other side without driving myself crazy. So there were a lot of little aha moments out there when I just would suddenly wise up to something and go, oh, well if I